Detroit, 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 Detroit is different. Detroit is different. Detroit, Detroit, different. Detroit is different. Detroit is.
Welcome back to the Detroit is Different podcast studios. And in studio, I have a guest that I've known for some time, back in an arc of always engaging with the people and finding out the social work is really the root of it. But it makes sense because the people is how I've met and how she served. And right now she's running for mayor of the city of Detroit from another executive position. Saunteel Jenkins, how are you doing today?
I'm fantastic. How are you, Kari?
Good, fantastic. Now, that is an adjective you don't hear often. I like it.
I strive to be fantastic every day.
Okay, all right. See, look at that. The thesaurus is going and all of that. See, in the world of ChatGPT, the words can still run without it.
All right, there you go.
All right, so these Detroit is Differents always start with like the roots of a person's origin and what's happening, and I don't know how that got thrown. Because I swear
I thought that was our background music.
Oh,
no.
Man. So we got to start again. Hold on. And I specifically, I just turned down the sound for the wrong thing. So hold on. That was a good running start.
Right.
Good running start. Let's see.
How many of those do you drink a day?
I try to do 2.
Nice.
So it's a lot. Now you got to be close to a bathroom.
I know that's right. That's real.
But yes, water. All right, here we go. Welcome back to the Detroit is Different podcast studios. And in studio, I have a guest that I've known for some time, and you've known her for some time too, because interacting with the people of Detroit is what she's done. I know her from the realm of city council and leadership there, and went on to another executive body, more so to lead and help and be there with citizens as well. And right now, running for mayor, one of the first people that was out here running for mayor and actually in the streets collecting signatures to get on the ballot to run for mayor.
That's right.
Saunteel Jenkins, how you doing today?
I'm fantastic. How are you, Kari?
Very well, and fantastic. As I said, this is like the restart. It's one of those adjectives you don't hear often, so we definitely applaud that.
Thank you. Every day above ground is a good day, right?
I'm with it.
Yeah. And if it's not, you have a chance to make it better.
Exactly.
That's real.
Exactly. And the Ice Cube said, if you can get a pickup game with a triple-double, I'm just messing with you. It's like, who's keeping stats?
Today was a good day.
Yes. So we start these Detroit is Differents always within your story and your scope, the history of it, the roots of the Detroit story. I know bits and pieces from your Detroit Next appearance, which is more definitely in the political realm. We're going to talk some politics here, but more so, let's talk you and your Detroit story. How many generations deep? What brought your family up this way?
Yes. My family came here for the same reason so many families came here, right? For the American dream. My dad came here from Tallahassee, Florida.
Wow.
Yeah, it's from Tallahassee, Florida. And my mom came here from Natchez, Mississippi.
Okay,
so
now where is Natchez, Mississippi?
Natchez, Mississippi is right over the border from Vidalia, Louisiana.
Oh, man.
But it is the antebellum plantation capital of the South. Like literally, when you see slave movies, they're often shot in Natchez, Mississippi because of the antebellum homes. And it's interesting because going there even today, my mom's 50th high school reunion was 2018 or 19. And we went down there with her. And even today, they have a white side of town and a black side of town.
Wow.
Like we went to this restaurant, Carl and I, my husband and I, because we're doing what we do, right? We're driving around, checking it out, and we see this place called like Biscuits and Bourbon or something like that. And we were like,
Okay. All
How
right.
can you go wrong?
There we go. Hey, when in Rome.
When in Rome. So we went inside. We were the only Black folks. But they were friendly and started talking to us and asked, of course, they knew we weren't from.
Not from around here.
Right, exactly. So why are you here? My mom's high school reunion. They knew exactly what high school it was. Sadie V. Thompson, because there's only one still. And then there's a white school. And when I told my aunt, who my mom was staying with, that we went to Biscuits and Bourbon, even she said, oh, y'all went to the white side of town.
Wow.
So it's like still
very segregated.
Still very segregated. It's so interesting. And seeing the homes that as a little girl were mesmerizing because they were huge. They were up on these hills. Many of them had gates. Seeing them as an adult was actually depressing.
Wow.
It was just a completely different perspective.
Yeah. It's interesting you bring that up as one of the largest, I forget what state and place that was, but there was a recent fire at one of the homes, a plantation home where people would often go. And if anyone's ever been on a plantation trip, I remember years ago we had one with our family in North Carolina. Shout out and rest in peace to Judge, the Honorable Roy Rulack, that set up a lot of that for our family. And it's a mix of emotions that you will feel because you will see opulence, you will see decadence, you'll see prestige. But then you turn your back and you see how what's upkept, as they would say, like the enslaved quarters too.
Right. That's right.
And then you have this understanding of a lot more of American history.
That's right. And how that opulence was achieved, how it was really achieved, right? Yeah, it's completely different. And another interesting take, though, for Natchez is their textile industry. Right? It has completely gone away. That was where most of their wealth came from, right? It was cotton picking. And that industry and the tobacco industry. So even the most opulent homes as a kid, you can see now the entire town and region is struggling because the industries have gone away, right? And certainly the free labor has been going for a while.
Years, decades. So connecting this story, I definitely have the question of two places, Florida and Mississippi. Oftentimes, we're so used to these Detroit is different having like almost Alabama and Georgia is almost where every Black person in Detroit is from. You know what I'm saying? It has some roots.
Right.
But Tallahassee, as people know, the home of FAMU, home of also Florida State University. It's Northern Florida, which Florida has its own culture in every region.
That's right.
But
and it's the capital.
It is the capital as well. Yeah. What was it that brought this way? Because a lot of people from Florida, it seems like they always stay so East Coast. Like, I'm guessing you got family in New York and you probably got family in Chicago because that's Mississippi.
I don't. I have family my family came to Michigan, the majority on both sides. And I had some stay in Florida, some stay in Mississippi, and some of my family from Mississippi ended up going to Fort Wayne, Indiana.
Wow.
And that's pretty much it. Yeah, so they didn't go. And my mom wanted to go to school in Texas. She had been accepted to college in Texas, to Texas A&M. But my grandmother wouldn't let her go. And because my aunts, her older sister, she was the youngest, had come to Detroit looking for a job in the autos, my grandmother told her she could come here to go to school. So she came here and registered her first semester at Wayne State. She met my dad, and then there was me, and the rest is history.
Well, shout out to your auntie, because you owe your auntie a lot of love for being a Detroiter.
That's right, yes.
So it was your aunt that makes that trek up here, and then what follows? What neighborhood?
My two aunts, actually.
Both?
Yes, my mother's two of her three older sisters were here. And the first neighborhood, the first street I lived on, I don't remember this, was Eileen. But I've heard all the stories about us living on Eileen. The first street I remember is Appeline. And it was Appeline and Joy Road, not far from McKenzie High School, Drew High School. And in that home, it was a 3-bedroom house, 1 bathroom. It was me, my mother, my father, my sister, my brother, my aunt. She had 3 kids. We were all living in the same house. And then I had another aunt who was not in the greatest
Health.
marriage.
Oh, marriage.
And her and my cousin would live with us on and off when things weren't going well. And then we'd have my grandmother come up in the summer from Mississippi and say, I have no idea how we did it. But we did. We all had somewhere to sleep. We all managed to, get our baths or showers and get dressed and get to school on time every day. I have no idea how we did it. And I think even more important, I had no clue how poor we were. We were happy. And our house was like the Kool-Aid house. Of course, because there were 6 kids living in the house. Everybody wanted to hang out at our house because it was almost like a built-in playground. But we would have barbecues in the backyard, and the folks from Appeline, we still talk to each other, see each other. They come out and volunteer. Some of the aunties from Appeline, one of them was volunteering with us on Earth Day, planting gardens for Brilliant Detroit. So it was a very close-knit neighborhood and family. And I'll tell you who else was on that street with us. Carol Gist. Remember, Carol was the first Black Miss USA. She lived across the street from us.
So very familiar with the AP neighborhood, as that's what we would call it, moving around and everything. But
Right.
Yes, the AP neighborhood.
Yes.
And what that meant even for you. And you shared so many things that in the introduction, I do want to go back to certain points. But now where do you stand in age to everybody else of the 6 kids? Are you the oldest, youngest, in the middle?
Of my siblings, I'm the oldest. It's me. My sister is 3 years younger than me. My brother, who I think you know, has passed, was 3 years younger than her. And then for my cousins, they were the 3 cousins who were living in the house with us. They were, the youngest was a year older, because he's still here. He is a year older than me. And then he had a brother that was 2 years older than him. We lost him when I was in high school to a car accident. So my family has
dealt with some tragedy.
Yeah, we've dealt with a lot of tragedy. And then I have an older cousin who is 6 years older than me. She's still here too.
Okay. So when the kids would come play, that kind of puts you in the space of being in the middle.
Right. Yes.
And that also puts you in the space of really having to kind of know some personalities. As I'm guessing the rest of you talk about the community would be there, were many of the other houses filled with a lot of other children too? Was it one of those neighborhoods where basically you would walk out on the block and, you could play a really great game of some red light, green light?
Red light, green light. We would play stop and go, tag, routines. We always had dance routines that we put together in the backyard.
Okay.
What?
Okay.
Yeah, we would. Yeah, we do, and we would practice. So it wasn't like something we took lightly.
Okay.
You had to practice the routine so that when the adults were there on the weekend, we could do our little routine. And you had to be in step. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So now it sounds like you have always been in a space with a lot of people and navigating spaces with a lot of people. How do you think that impacts just the way you see life today?
Interesting. Yes, I think I've always been in a space where my mother was the kind of mother who always welcomed a lot of people, right? Of all sort of backgrounds, personalities. So I think I learned that piece of it from my mother. Um, and then as a kid, being in that house with 6 kids up until it was when I was in the 3rd grade, we moved. My dad, after he worked at the post office long enough, they saved up and actually bought a house.
Mm-hmm.
It was still, I mean, it was probably 900,000 square feet, but we thought it was a mansion,
Mm-hmm.
right? My sister and I had our own room that we shared. My brother had his own room. We had a basement. So once we left Appeline, it's interesting. I wasn't navigating the kids in the same way. So there were 2 dynamics for me that happened. One, it wasn't lonely because it was still me, my sister, and brother. But we moved over by Cody High School during a period where Detroit was still transitioning, right? And there were still neighborhoods that were still majority white. And that was one of them. And we were like the 2nd or 3rd Black family to move on Warwick. That was before the police precinct was even there. And I remember very vividly our first week. We're outside playing. We meet this kid, Steve. Steve was a little white kid, a good kid, nice. We were all playing. My mom asked Steve where he lived. Steve pointed and he said, I live in this house. Because we just randomly saw him outside, started talking, playing, did what kids do. He said, I live in that house, but my mom says we're moving because there are too many inns coming to the neighborhood.
Wow.
And he said the word, but his face didn't change, Kari. This kid was innocent. He didn't know. He was just repeating what he'd heard adults say, right? But when he said it, my mother said, okay, it's nice meeting you, Steve. You know, we're going to go in the house now. You should probably head home. But then she told us, you all don't go to that house, right? You stay away from that house. You can be nice to Steve. Don't be mean to him, but don't go to his house under any circumstances. And we were like, what do you mean? You know, we had just come from a block where we could go to any house. And we were like, what does that? So that was sort of the beginning of some changes.
And also understanding race at a very young age for you.
Yes.
And I'm sure for your mother and your father, knowing their life story, it's a whole nother arc of understanding from Mississippi and Tallahassee,
right,
that, okay, some of this is definitely entrenched and is groomed into a lot of people. Because like you say, Steve's a child. Steve doesn't know.
Right.
I look at a lot of the racism as a lot of misunderstandings. People fear what they don't understand.
That's right.
Hate what they can't conquer. Shout out to Nas, but I love that line. But it's just truth.
That's right.
It's just truth. And from it, it doesn't dismiss, especially any hateful action that can cause harm.
Mm-hmm.
Just contextualizes.
That's right. Yeah.
And as a child, especially from a block that sounds like so many of the blocks we all grew up on AP, you're outside playing. It's like, okay, this is cool. We're having fun.
Right.
And now I'm having this exchange with my mom where I don't even understand what's happening.
Right. Exactly. You're like, what happened? Are we in trouble?
Mm-hmm.
Is he in trouble? We're like, what?
Yep.
Right. But in hindsight, I think my mother handled it probably the best way she could. Right. And it probably took my sister and I a minute for us to understand what happened.
I think your mom handled it amazing when I can think of, because I'm guessing that era, we're talking like what, late 70s, early 80s, that
right.
era, in today's era, I'm sure it's probably somebody from Gen Z watching right now. It's like, it's no Twitter, it's not a Black Lives Matter movement. It's a whole lot of different things going on about where safety goes. And these are discussions that I've uplifted often through these Detroit is Difference too, where often the reflection of the elders that I've heard has been, they were wrong because, this should have happened or that should have happened, but sometimes we don't have the gravitas and the understanding of everything faced.
That's right.
So that silent generation arc carries over in our communities in safety in a lot of ways. Now, the sad thing about it is that same silence carries over in things that definitely should have been brought up, but there are certain things that stay silent.
That's right.
Or handled in a savvy finesse.
Yes. It's so interesting that you say that. My grandmother, my mother is named Jo. She's named after her father. Her father died while my grandmother was pregnant with her, but my grandfather was a locksmith in Mississippi, which was kind of a big deal during that time. So while he was living, they had a pretty decent life. When he died, though, there was no 401k, no simple IRA or plan for families, right? So my grandmother ended up working as a domestic in one of those homes that we talk about. When she moved to Detroit with us, she was so strict. Something else my sister and I didn't understand. She'd always say, children should be seen, not heard. Sit on the floor. We couldn't sit on furniture. Sit your dirty tails on the floor, right? Don't put your dirty tail on that couch, on the bed. We would have to eat biscuits with a fork. Who eats a biscuit with a fork, right?
Oh,
but
man.
She was very strict. And it was later that we came to understand her being in these white homes in Mississippi. And when my mother and her sisters were around, being quiet, being compliant was a safety issue.
Yes.
To the point that you're making, right? Because little Black kids who were seen as getting out of line could be hurt, seriously hurt, or killed, right? So that sort of, what we thought was being mean was her way of keeping us safe.
Yes, very much so. And back to the whole children are supposed to be seen and not heard. It's not like you can really have that exchange with grandma either.
Exactly, right?
So you can't say, why are we
doing
this?
Yeah.
What are we doing?
You can say it if you want to. You
Yeah,
get a
but-
Daniel Green slipper in your face.
Yes.
Come across the room like a boomerang.
Yes. So, but it's often that, because you're right on possibly if childcare is needed on the job, and it's like, okay, you just, washing some walls, and I can only imagine just even the term domestic, like what my grandma was like, cleaning is man, oh man.
Right.
So it was a different level of cleaning.
It was a like inspections, right?
Yes.
How the corners are tucked in the bed. Everything was like,
Yep. Like really cleaning a baseboard for real.
for real.
Not like just swiffering it off.
What is a Swiffer anyway, right?
So-
You need a rag,
Mhm.
right?
So if you're there and on those tasks and you did all of that, then it's like, yeah, you're going to chill, child, or hap in that room. It's like the running joke they say. It's like Black people have that living room that you can't be in. That's that old school family stuff. It's like you just know. And it's like, wow, the couch looks amazing.
Well, back in the day, they would put the plastic cover over the couch, right?
Yeah.
So you sit there in the summertime
Burn it up.
with some shorts on, and you get up and it's all stuck to you. You can hear your skin peeling off the plastic.
I know. You can, all you kids, thank your Generation X parents for allowing you to color on crayons on couches and
That
stuff.
part.
Like that. It's like, when I have a kid, that's not going to happen.
Right.
But a lot of it is that safety.
Mhm.
A lot of it is what's seen and what's known and contextualized, because you say those fears of what happens to so many of those children just being around.
It's real.
So in the work journey, where's your dad end up working? Where's your mom end up working? What's happening as you're coming up?
So my dad ended up, his two brothers, because he had two older brothers that came here as well. Both of his brothers ended up in the autos, and he ended up at the post office.
Wow.
His first job, though, actually was as a security guard.
Where at?
And he was a security guard at Motown Museum.
Wow. That's throwback.
Yes.
That's throwback.
Yeah, so he talked about all the folks coming in and out of the museum when he was there and how cool it was.
So if this is the 70s, it's like Motown is like
It's
the
real.
production is down the street. The museum that was like the start of the museum.
Exactly. That was the studio. It wasn't and I'm sorry, I said
The museum. Oh, he was
he
studio.
was at the studio. He was a security guard at Motown Studios before it was a museum. Like when they were actually making music there.
Oh man, I know he got some stories. I know he got some stories on him.
And then I'll just bring it forward some decades. My sister ended up marrying Melvin Franklin's nephew.
Wow.
Right? So Mama Rose from the movie,
Mm-hmm.
who raised my brother-in-law, we've spent time in her house with all of the gold and platinum records on the wall, and she had Grammys and, because she had her son's collection. She had much of his collection. So that was, it's pretty cool. And her and my dad would talk about the Motown studio stories and
Yep. I've heard a couple. Yeah. I've heard a couple from shout out to Clay McMurray and rest in peace and Joe Pep. I've heard a couple, and then obviously my godmother, late great Orthea Barnes. They tell some stories.
Right.
Yes, I assume that was also a stressful job for your dad, because from some of the stories I hear. It's like, you ain't bringing that foolishness in here. You gonna get me fired.
That part, right? Somebody showing up trying to get paid or something.
Yes, it's like, let's go to something more stable. The post office.
The post office, right? Yes, which is stable. He was at the post office for 47 years.
Wow.
Yeah, he retired unwillingly. The Thursday before his last day of work, I should say, was the Thursday before Easter last year. He came home, couldn't catch his breath. My mother thought he was having a heart attack, called EMS, and they took him to the hospital. It's kind of it's a funny story now. Mm-hmm. It wasn't funny then. Mm-hmm. By the time she got to the hospital, they were asking her, like, does he suffer from, does he have, early stage dementia? Or my mother was like, no, he was short of breath, couldn't catch his breath. We thought he was having a heart attack. Why do you think it's dementia? And they said, well, he said he delivered mail today, but he's 77.
Wow.
She was like, yes.
He did.
He did. And he delivered tomorrow if he could. And he ended up retiring after that because of medical issues. But 77 years, over 1 million miles without an accident ever, in his mail truck. Yeah, he's a pretty proud letter carrier.
I love that story, and even just that generation of men, as you talk about, from Florida, coming here, buying a home with the family, and just proud work of like putting in that work and that grit. And I can already know, yes, I hear him, I know him from like a lot of the other OGs I know. Yes, he probably was like, no, I can still do it.
That's right. Yeah.
So I'm sure he's just as active doing something very active.
We're trying to keep him active. Like, come on, let's get out. Let's walk. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but he loved delivering mail. He was promoted once to a supervisor role, and he was in it for a few months, and then he was like,
put me back out on the street.
Back out on the street, right. Wow. And then the second time they offered it to him, he just didn't take it because he knew, no, this is what I like.
And that says a lot to 77, that commitment, as they say, rain, sleet, snow, hail.
Rain, hail, sleet, or snow.
You're going to still deliver.
Yes, and he did.
And also seeing that commitment of that type of work in service, because postal carrying is in service, even though our current administration federally does a lot of strange things, especially possibly related to the post office. As of now, it
Shout
is a
out to our
part.
letter carriers, right?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you for what you do.
And same thing. How has like seeing that commitment impacted how you see and approach work?
Mhm.
How dedicated your father was
Yeah.
over so many years.
Yeah. It's work ethic, right? He taught me good work ethic. My mother, the same. My mother retired from Macy's. She started at Hudson's,
Okay.
then Marshall Field's,
Mm.
and then it was Macy's by the time she retired. So
Wow.
watching both of them work very hard, serving others, right, in different ways, but they were both definitely customer service, people-oriented roles that they played. And I learned a lot from them. For starters, neither of them ever meet a stranger, right? They've never met a stranger. And they can find the good in anyone, right?
Wow.
Everybody brings value. So those are things that I've learned from them. And literally the rain, hail, sleet, or snow, that was true for my mom and dad.
Wow.
They always, they
They were
found a
showing
way
up.
to get to, that's right.
Mhm.
Because that's what you do. You made a commitment. You need to show up and live up to your commitment.
Okay. And that definitely goes into some cultural differences in some workplace environments of today, I would say. And I'm sure we'll get there. But now that we're into some of that foundational story, definitely know of the tragedy with your brother.
Mm-hmm.
I want to kind of track where are you at in school and what's happening during the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can kind of pick up and go from there.
Okay. Yeah. So when my brother was killed, it was 1991. So I was in school at Wayne State. I was going to school part-time. I was working full-time in 91. I was still at Focus Hope. That's my first job out of high school was Focus Hope. I was
Wow.
17 when they hired me. I knew I wanted to be a social worker and what I wanted to do. So, but I also had to work and do it. So I always found jobs in places where I could learn from the people I'm working with, right? And learn about this field that I wanted to be in. But I typed about 80, 85 words a minute when I graduated from high school because
Wow.
my curriculum at Cass was secretarial science.
There you go. There you go.
So I knew how to type. I knew shorthand, right? This was before computers, right? We were literally typing on typewriters.
And word processors.
No.
Just typewriters for real?
Typewriters.
Old school typewriters.
Word processors were so new that only like the highest
level.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So when I started at Focus Hope, we were on typewriters, and then we ended up getting the typewriters that it was like the prequel to a word processor. The typewriter had a little screen on the front so you could see it before you hit return.
Okay.
So then you could, if there was
make an edit.
Right, exactly. But we still had the white out there too. So that's how
That's where you started
my career. That's where I started at Focus Hope.
Okay, and let me frame this for everybody watching this younger. Okay, a typewriter is a device that letters people needed to type. And actually, shout out to Miss LaFleur from Northwestern. If you ever had a typing class, because that's fundamental almost throughout all curriculums as far as I remember it. And some of those typing teachers, Miss LaFleur was like a general because you have to and I still peck at the keyboard, but technically you're supposed to place your hands in a certain way. That way you're typing faster. And the goal is to get really 50 words per minute, but 85 is amazing. And then some people, you continue and you can join. Hence, you were in effect and Focus Hope. How do you, the job that's in my neighborhood, how do you make that connection in just that search? What was the culture like there when you start?
That's kind of a loaded question. So I started at Focus Hope as a summer intern because I was 17 when I graduated. So when I applied for the job, I was a kid who was like, I'm moving out as soon as I can.
Okay.
When I turned 12,
Hilarious.
I'm out of here. When I was
Hilarious.
12, I was like, okay, 14 for real, right? I'm out of here at 14. By 15, I was like, okay, when I graduate from high school, right? So shortly after I graduated from high school, my girlfriend and I got an apartment together, 1-bedroom apartment on Hidden Pines. It's still there on Telegraph and 8 Mile, next door to where the Super Kmart used to be on 8 Mile Telegraph.
Yeah.
It was a golf course then.
Wow.
We had a 1-bedroom apartment with twin beds and all of this hodgepodge of furniture that people had given to us. But I made $5 an hour at Focus Hope, and I was paying rent, car insurance, but whatever bills came with trying to be grown, that's what I was doing. So when I turned 18, they hired me full time.
Wow.
At Focus Hope. And I was working for, at that time, Focus Hope had multiple factories. They had one called Cyclotech, which was rebuilding transmissions. And they were opening another one called F&H. So I was hired to type the policy manuals for this factory.
Wow.
For F&H. Yeah, so that's what I was doing. And I ended up having some issues. I had some Me Too issues at Focus Hope that I have not
dealt with.
Yeah.
So, yeah, in that culture, it's like also welcoming and walking into something that's like, damn, this is not what I was thinking the workplace was.
Yeah, that's right.
And especially when we're thinking like early 90s, the culture of things.
It was still 80s. This was probably this. When I had that issue, it was probably like 89. I graduated from high school in 88.
Okay.
So this issue was probably 89, maybe 90. But yeah, it was definitely a different culture.
89, 90. Definitely when we look at and we applaud the movement of Me Too, then
yes,
it's really supported by so many women of back then in that era where, I mean, yeah, it's like guys being fresh on you. I mean, we have a sitting, well, now I guess we got a couple of them. We got a sitting U.S. Supreme Court justice around the time where it was just looked at like it's just part of the workplace environment. Exactly. Boys will be boys. You know, that guy's being fresh on you. And it's like...
right. And it's completely inappropriate. And especially that I was, 19, 20. And the guy who was coming after me was probably in his 50s.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was a pretty awful situation for a while. And I ended up being transferred out of that factory. But this was after complaint after complaint after complaint. Obviously, the folks who are at Focus Hope now were not there then.
Yeah.
But the woman who hired me, who was actually the deputy director of HR, when I went to her, and she was trying to help, but one of the men who were part of the problem was higher up than she was. So she ended up making threats to take it outside of Focus Hope to EEOC, and they ended up transferring me. This tells you how far we've come. I remember this so vividly. The guy who was harassing me was the foreman of the plant at the time, and they set up a meeting, and it was me, the woman who was the deputy director of personnel. It wasn't called HR, it was called personnel back then. The guy who was harassing me, my boss, who I never saw because he was there building out this factory, right? And another person who was much higher up. And I'm like 19, 20, sitting there.
Wow.
And they're like, so what do you want?
Yeah.
What do you want us to do? I mean, now I would know what to say. Then I was like, I just want to keep my job.
Yeah.
I just want to come to work.
And not deal with this.
And not deal with this. Literally, I would get up
Mhm.
in the mornings, sit on the side of my bed and cry. And my roommate would just pat my back and say, it's okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was like, I just want to come to work and not deal with this. And I ended up getting a transfer, which turned out to be one of the best experiences. I ended up being transferred to work for the guy who was over HR and over the food program. And I learned, about office etiquette. I learned about the 40-hour work week, what that actually means, what's counted, what's not counted. I learned how to do timesheets and payroll, and it turned out being good. It turned out to be a good experience for me, but my early years in that job were pretty traumatic.
And very much a nightmare.
Yeah.
That you were dealing with.
Yeah.
And so opening that, and I love these interviews because we can get in different arcs and stop in history and time and pause to have better understandings of how far we have come in society.
Yes.
Still so much more where we need to go. Because still, even I'd imagine a 19-year-old still not necessarily knowing how to process and be in a space with so many others that do have advocates for them.
Yes.
And that's why employment support for matters like that, you do have HR because of that. Because I can just tell you, and the errors from so much of what I hear, not just from men, but also with women, it's just like they say, boys will be boys, which is basically, like I say, as our president say, locker room talk. Basically, it's saying that there is no accountability for the actions of a man if he is harassing a woman. That's right. What that's saying.
And I think we've come much further than we were at that point, but we still have work to do. Absolutely.
Many strides.
Yes.
Many strides. And so during this time, you're going to Wayne State and your brother passes, so you've already kind of facing, okay, you're out the house, so you like that, but you're also facing like some heavier things, and your brother now is murdered.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And the day that my brother was killed, I went by my mom's, which I often did because I lived, maybe a mile and a half, 2 miles, not far at all. And I would stop there because my mother cooked all the time, right? I'm
free food, yes.
Free food,
yes,
exactly,
yes.
Right?
Always bring the babies back.
Hello, that's right. Even today, right? My mom called me yesterday. I cooked.
There you go.
Right? So when I got there, though, my dad was home. He was the only one home, so I figured my sister and my brother would be coming in soon. He was a freshman at Cody High School at the time, and my sister was a junior at Cody High School. She was a senior, I'm sorry. And so I said, well, I'll fix something. My mom was actually at work.
Yeah.
And I started fixing food, and the phone rang. And it was Jovan, is my brother's name. It was Jovan's best friend's mother.
Oh, man.
His two best friends were brothers, and they lived right behind us, literally the fences. We shared fences in the backyard. So they would jump.
Hop the fence and
right?
play.
And this day they were at St. Suzanne, which is where I had my announcement, St. Suzanne Catholic Church, which is now Cody Rouge Community Center. They had an after-school basketball league. They were at the basketball league. My brother, one of the things that I took pride in as the oldest, there were oftentimes, we didn't get everything for Christmas, right? My parents worked, but we struggled, right?
Yep.
And so I would save my money, and I would always buy my brother and sister something like nice that they wanted for Christmas. And that was when distressed denim had just come in style.
Yep.
And used jeans was like all the rave. Used jeans was like today's version of used would be.
I'm not the biggest on fashion, but it's whatever Pharrell Williams and
Probably. Exactly, right?
the high-end fashion people,
Whatever.
Beyonce and Rihanna, or A$AP Rocky. That's the guy that always wears the cool stuff. Whatever he would be wearing, that.
It's that. Exactly, right? And I bought my brother a used blue jean jacket. And he wanted to wear it. This was January. It was January 3rd. It was the first day back to school.
You want to be fly.
You want to be fly. My mother wouldn't let him wear it because at that time people were taking jackets, right? And he had a Duke University starter jacket that was a few years old. That's what he wore to school. And that's what they killed him for. So he, Miss Sawyer called and she was frantic saying, they shot him. The whole time in my mind, I'm like, my poor brother, he's hurt. But I'm thinking his arm, his leg, I just got to get to him. All right, he's 14. I tell my dad, I run out of the house and we lived 2 houses from the corner. So all I had to do was, go to the corner, run, and then he was 1 block over.
Yeah.
2 houses from the corner. So as soon as I hit the corner, I could see him. He was on the ground. He was, his eyes were still open. There was blood coming out of his mouth.
Oh my God.
And it was, I could see it today like it was
yesterday.
Yeah, and I knew he was dead. They shot him once. A 9mm went through his heart, came out his back. So the blessing in that is that he did not suffer. But yeah, 14, my brother was gone.
And also, that changes similar to this act is the tragedy of your cousin passing is still impactful to a family because anytime a child passes, it stirs up a lot in a family.
Absolutely.
In people personally. But the act of murder, really at any age, is going to leave so many more questions, so much more.
Yes.
And you pick up the phone from that, and now your immediate response to that, how you still see it. How do you even move towards a process of having and understanding the grief of that?
So there are several things. First, my mother, who I always say is one of the strongest women I know, and she is not the societal version of what we think when we think is strong, but my mother is like my mother has found strength during times when we're at our weakest, and that was one of them. When I went through all the stages, we all did. Me, my sister, my dad, my guilt was part of it for everybody. My sister felt guilty, like I should have, made my brother come home with me. He would have been safe. My mother, I shouldn't have been at work. My dad, everybody had a version. When I got to my anger phase, I told my mother I was quitting school. I was like, I'm done. I just didn't want to do anything really, but I definitely didn't want to be a social worker. Why would I help people? And how could I help people if the world took my brother away? And he was, He was a good kid. He was a loving. Even at 14, Curry, my brother was the kid who would hug me and kiss me every time he see me.
Wow.
Even if his friends were around, he wasn't embarrassed. He's like, that's my big sister. You know, I love my sister. He did the same thing to my other sister and my mother and my aunts. And so I thought if this innocent kid could be taken that way, I didn't have anything to offer. And my mother told me I had to finish school, not for my brother. He was blessed because he was loved. But the kids that thought his jacket was worth more than his life needed me to finish school. Because if they had been loved or if there had been some intervention for them, kids like my brother would be safe too. So that kind of forgiveness, compassion, empathy that she could find even in the midst of her grief, I think is part of what, not I think, I know, it's part of what drives me, right? It's part of this heart for service that I have. It's the heart of my mom, really.
So now let's fast forward through that. From social working, in that position, you end up spending some time working with one of the anchors in so much of everything when we think about like ordinances and a lot of Detroit history, and Maryann Mahaffey.
Yes.
An office that's just known also for outreach to the people, you know.
Yes.
So from there, you're like, I want to get in city council. What was it from that lens in social work that drew you into politics of knowing that this may be a space where I can support and advocate for people more?
Yeah. Interesting. It wasn't me saying I want to get into politics. Maryann always had interns in her office because she was a social work, right? She had her master's in social work and she taught at Wayne State. So she always had Wayne State students in her office. But Wayne State would also always send the best students. And I'm proud to say that, yes, I was one of the best students.
One of them.
Yeah.
Okay, so it was through the school at Wayne State that you end up in that space.
Yes, I interned in her office. And I tried to get my internship changed, actually, because I was like, what
politics.
Exactly, it's politics. What does that have to do with social work? I'm trying to save babies and families. I don't want to be involved in this. Maryann told me that social workers put Band-Aids on wounds caused by poor public policy. She said you need more good people to get in on the front end because it reduces the damage on the back end. That one conversation literally changed my life.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was obviously a much longer conversation, but it changed my thinking on social work. It changed my thinking on politics, and it changed my career trajectory.
Okay. So up to that point, how aware and involved and up to date were you on like a lot of the public policy from a local level?
Not at all. Not at all. I voted, right?
Yeah.
I've always, because my mom would take us to the polls with her to vote. So I always knew that I needed to vote. If I'm being honest, I'm not sure I was fully aware of the impact of my vote because I wasn't fully aware of the impact of public policy, right? So that experience propelled my political awareness and understanding.
Okay. So with that understanding, you, the council, your run for council, like I say, I remember it early on just through my godmother, another one of the, like, I would say, because like it's like levels and everything.
Yes,
So it's like, you know, like in how I call it, it's like you have like, okay, that's like an OG, like meaning
That's
like you're
right.
very old. Then you have like a big homie, meaning like I look up to them, but they're not as much of like as an OG. But a big homie of one of my OGs and godmother, Joanne Watson,
That's right.
was Maryann Mahaffey.
That's right.
So always kind of engaging around how they empower people, because one of her OGs was Irma Henderson.
That's right.
And if you study the archives of, back to, like we say, things have progressed, but they still ain't progressed that much. When you look at women in Detroit politics for so many years, the anchor that you'd see are Maryann Mahaffey and Irma Henderson.
Yes.
So that relationship grows on to create, through Irma Henderson's Women Council, like a lot of other women. You know, that's the Barbara Rose Collins, that's the Joanne Watsons, the Orthea Barnes, Brenda Scotts, even you know, I'm forgetting them, but
even
a lot of that grows. Yeah, definitely. A lot of that growth kind of happens in this, because that's where the work happens.
That's right. And I will just add, not just in politics, if you look at so many of the nonprofits that are still around today, the founders were women who came out of that era as well.
True indeed.
Yeah.
True indeed. Like Kim Trent. That's how I know. I know her through my godmom. So, you know, and so many others, but it's a world. So in that political world, and as much as I'm saying it's a world that is moving forward, that some of those same challenges were very present. That's why it was needed for that type of camaraderie.
That's right.
What led for you to say, okay, I want to get into, I want to be in council? Because you have a stint in council that clearly I believe you've could have stayed there for forever. You're there in council at a time during bankruptcy and a lot of other things. People are seeing the city differently from I guess the media narrative.
Yes.
What made you say, I want to run for that?
Exactly what you just said. We were in a period in the city where it looked like we were headed into bankruptcy. And the thing that people were talking about nationally with Detroit was leadership or lack thereof, right? There were conversations about people calling each other cartoon characters, right? At the council table, council members arguing with kids who had come down the city council. There were all of these things that were happening that were not showing our city. We were already struggling as a city anyway, but watching what was happening on the legislative level wasn't helping us. And having been there in an era where I was watching Maryann Mahaffey, Irma Henderson, Joanne Watson, even some of the men, right? Mel Ravitz, Clyde Cleveland. They were Gil Hill. They were statesmen in their own right and in their own way. They were people who had long, strong careers before they ran for office. They had sort of earned their right to be there, if you will, and then ran for office. So I knew what it took. And my husband and I have both always said, our blessings have come from this city. Anything we have to give, we want to give back to the city.
Wow.
So that's what made me say, okay, I'm going to run. And I never said, I'm going to run for council and be there forever. I don't want to be a lifetime politician. That's not my goal in life is not politics. My goal in life is public service. And public service comes in all forms.
Okay. All right. And being in the position, because I always think city council and then even council president, that's a tough spot. I believe it's a tough spot because some of those arguments, some of the attention that's played out, is the most front-facing and public-based position politically that you can have. The mayor's office is a lot different. Like the mayor can present as the mayor would like to present.
That's right.
Council, you're dealing with everything head on, and people usually would like executive actions to solve whatever they're coming to the council table for, not necessarily legislative stuff. So this is that Kari rant I usually go on. It's like there are 3 branches of government and they all serve different purposes. So if you are looking for a legislator to take executive actions, you're not going in the right direction, and vice versa. And oftentimes it really gets under my skin when I'm sitting in political forums where executives are saying they can do legislative stuff and legislative people are saying they can do executive stuff, and I'm like,
Yes. That's right.
Yes. But
listen, you are preaching to the choir. I agree. That's part of why I did not agree with districts, because the whole premise of direct accountability says that your legislator actually has control over city services, and they don't. So we're holding people in some ways accountable for something that they don't control, right? So
I do remember that vote. I was at the Citizen at the time, so I was abreast to that challenge, and I brought it up. I'll say it again. I love my city manager, Kim Tandy's amazing, but the office itself supersedes. And I've been to too many community meetings where it's like, if the city manager walks in and your council member walks in, it looks like the city manager is like the guy. He's like the guy on a hot summer day that walks to the ice cream truck and is buying ice cream for everybody.
That's awesome. That is a great. Yes.
Whereas the city council person is like the I guess the babysitter of the kids. So technically you're right now. It's like he just got me a blow pop. I don't care what you said. So it just doesn't function the same. So it's not a knock of any of the people personally.
No, absolutely not.
It's just the function, which brings another big question, especially you running for mayor, and we're getting closer to that in the close. But
we have so much to talk about.
Yeah, we wrapping. But why? Because this is something even with my godmother, rest in peace, I used to say, people take so much of this political stuff and policy stuff so personal that they're putting the personal before they even put the policy.
Yes.
How do you handle and deal with that?
Me personally, I deal with it. And do you mean attacks, or do you mean just
attacks?
Where we are?
Perspective is definitely not as defined. So let me give you an analogy. I love analogies. So like even in what I just said, that could be taken out, stripped, and say, Kari doesn't like district managers. And it's like, no, I never said that. I'm just saying the functionality and how people understand it in a way that, here's something that you can stamp this one that Kari says. People are exploiting the ignorance of understanding in the political process. There are people that exploit that often. I don't like that. And some of the people that exploit it are people doing things that I want to see done, but I don't ever like a person being taken advantage of for what they don't know.
Right. That's right. Yeah. And so my approach as a candidate and my approach as an elected official was always about increasing people's understanding, right? As a candidate, it gets harder. My team is always like, Saunteel, you got to shorten it up. You want to give all the details. You don't need to give people all the details, which is, it's true, because on the campaign trail, right, when we go to forums, they're like, you have 1 minute to tell me how you're going to balance the budget for the next 20 years.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Like Jesus. I'm just
I mean, you might as well just say that, because any explanation you give in 1 minute is right.
Yeah.
And my goal is always to increase my understanding as well as the understanding of others. Right. And as an elected official, as a candidate, it's why I love being in people's homes, because we can have those longer discussions about this is what your district council person can do or cannot do. This is what the mayor, the district manager cannot do. And this is why Even when we had districts on the ballot, when people asked my opinion, I told them the why.
I remember. And it was making some people frustrated.
Yeah.
And I was echoing. That's like a classic one where people took personal, that it's like, well, you against my district. And it's like, no, it's just technically this is all supposed to be at large because this is a legislative body that will make ordinances.
Right.
But
and if we're going to make it districts, let's change the charter so that council members can have some real accountability. So they
Yes.
have some say-so in how dollars are being spent in their district. They have some say-so in how services are being delivered in their district, not just they can make suggestions.
Yes.
All right.
And that becomes one of those tough things. Now, with that and where you're at now, mayor, for anybody that reads the charter of the city of Detroit, and we're going to put out a little bit more political education. I wish I had an analogy for this, but the mayor does a lot in the city of Detroit.
Yeah.
The way that the city of Detroit is chartered through the state of Michigan, the mayor's departments alone, like the mayor wakes up, and let's just talk about the people that lead these departments that are all under the jurisdiction and the executive order of the mayor. It's a lot. It's a lot. So let's just go to the departments, and all those departments have people under them. And obviously a lot of people that are executing the city services. That's internal, not just internal. You have external. So it's a lot of partnerships. Some of those partnerships are just governmental. The relationship between Detroit and the state of Michigan, the relationship between Detroit and Wayne County.
That's right.
It's a lot. So now you get into like all of these like partnerships between philanthropy and other businesses and community groups.
Yes. These
relationships, it's a lot. You have this executive experience just from thought.
I do.
And I give that because I don't even know if people have the understanding of that position all the way. More people, larger budget, but still in that executive position.
Yes.
How are you going to approach that first 100 days?
So the first 100 days, and this is one of those
classic questions.
It's a classic question, but because I'm a realist, my answer is not the sexy answer, But it's the first 100 days. We have to have a revenue estimating conference, like not in the first 100 days, in the first 30 days. We need to understand where we are financially, understand how much of the ARPA dollars, how many of the ARPA dollars have been spent, what's left, what positions and programs have been created with those dollars that we'll have to continue to fund. And if that's the case, where that funding is going to come from, do we have that funding? And then we'll have to start to prioritize from there. Secondly, within the first 100 days, we will have a team on the ground in each of the 7 districts discussing with residents a planning process, a strategic plan for the entire city, but it is based on the districts. We need to hear from residents, and some of it has been going on now, right? They're talking about zoning and land use. It's not done yet, but it'll help. But that needs to be layered with what's the citywide plan for safety, for public transit, for housing and affordable housing, right? All of those plans need to be layered on top of this land use, and it needs to be done in conjunction with our residents. Now, I'll tell you why my experience is really important and comes in handy here. So much of what has to be done when we talk about master planning and development and affordable housing, a lot of it is legislative because we'll have to write ordinances. However, the best written ordinance means nothing if you can't execute. And that's where the executive experience comes in, because what the mayor has to do is take the laws and the policies that have been written by the legislative body and make them work on the ground. And that's what I've been doing at Thaw for over a decade, right? Is making those policies and procedures work on the ground in service of people.
I love you shared that. Love the way you responded in this perspective of buttoning it up even to the point of your experience. Because at Thaw, which Thaw helps residents that are facing for years, shutoffs of
Utility
heat
shutoffs.
and electricity. You added even
And-
water to this during your time there.
That's right.
So these are quality of life issues that I'm assuming soon as it expands, it'll become internet and Lord knows, probably like some AI thing or something. But as this stuff becomes essential in life, that will be needed for households to function.
Absolutely.
And that idea to implementation.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes, as we have great ideas all the time in implementation, how do you function in just even building the right team to get that commitment to this idea to be implemented?
Mm-hmm. So it's building coalitions, especially when you're talking about legislation or funding. Part of what you have to do, and I learned this from Maryann, right? You build coalitions, and they're diverse coalitions of stakeholders. So if we're talking about water at Thaw, the first thing is identifying people in the state legislature who would be open to the idea of and had the understanding of the importance of clean, safe, affordable drinking water, right? Starting there. And then it was understanding the folks who didn't, right? People who are on the other side who were not likely to support the idea of water and the why, right? And one of the things that I figured out just from talking to people, you got to have that willingness to talk to everybody. And like I said earlier, it's me learning too, right? That's part of my learning process. 45% of the households in Michigan are still on well water. So if you are a state legislator who's coming from a community that is totally on well water, you're like, water affordability, that's not an issue, right? So it was educating, having the data, being able to show the data around the state, right? The first I launched the water program in Detroit, found a funder who would give, and actually they found me, gave us $1 million to start this program. And Kari, I just want to, I do want to come back a little bit because this is one of the things I'm really proud of. And during my time at City Council, it was, they were tough years. Not a crisis we created, but it was a crisis that we had to face coming into office, right? Didn't matter whose fault it was our responsibility as elected officials to find solutions to the financial crisis we were facing. But I worked with everybody and I read everything. So people, my colleagues, as well as consultants, people from the state, the emergency manager's office, they would often have those conversations with my office because I'd be the one who said, actually on page 45, paragraph 3, section 2, this is what it says. But out there, you said something different. Anyway, I'm a month into Thaw. I get a call from one of the consultants from the bankruptcy. And my last day at City Council, we announced we were being approved. The court was going to approve us coming out of bankruptcy. That was my very last day of City Council. So the bankruptcy exit had been approved, and all of the firms were deciding how they would give back to the city. It's a Friday night, Christmas. It's in December. I'm at a Christmas party. About 9:00, my phone rings, and I can see it's one of the consultants.
You're like,
right?
What they calling me
right. for? Like, he doesn't know that I'm not at the city anymore? And I know why they called me all times of night during the bankruptcy, because we were working all times of night. So I answer the phone, and he's like, yeah. He tells me his name. I don't know if you remember. Like, yeah, I remember. It's only been a month. I know who you are. And he said, well, we're deciding how we want to give back. And based on our work with you and watching how thorough you were and how you did your work as a council person, we know that if we give this money to Thaw, it will be well spent. So I'm like, wow, okay. And in my mind, I'm thinking, this is so exciting. Come on, $100,000, $200,000 is what I'm thinking in my mind. And he says, so a check for $1 million will be coming to Thaw. Tears just started coming down my face, literally tears. I'm at a Christmas party, mind you. So my husband sees me and he's running over like, did somebody die? What happened?
Yeah.
Right? And I'm like, no, it's good. This is good stuff. So that's how we started our Detroit water program with that $1 million. And what I did was take the data from the program at Detroit. I took that $1 million. I applied for another grant, shout out to Kresge, to do home repairs. So we would pay the bills, and then we would repair leaky pipes, replace toilets, replace and fix those things that were attributing to a high water bill. We tracked the data for 11 months, and we were able to show that if you spend an average $500 in a home, like in less than a year, we were able to reduce their water bill by over $150 per household in less than a year, right? So I took that data to the state. I had already started talking to them and showed them like all of the details of this pilot. And I was able to convince the state to give us $5 million to start a statewide program and replicate what we were doing in Detroit. The reason that's important is because I was able to not only use my legislative experience, right, and relationships and coalitions that I had built with people on both sides of the aisle, people who agreed with me and people who didn't. I was able to take that and turn it into service for people, right, to actually get the funding, bring it back home, and then get these water programs up and running in a way that first was serving Detroiters, then served families across the state of Michigan.
I love the way you even put that together, as far as they say, sometimes you go longer, but I like a full context so people get an understanding of the process and walking it through. Because the process of walking it through, it takes a lot of those relationships.
Yes.
And as an executive, it's constant. Renewing the contracts, employee contracts, meeting with the people. How do you even go about selecting your team for a position like mayor of the city of Detroit?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it will be, of course, the biggest team that I've had to to put together, but it would be the same concept, right? You're looking for people who are highly skilled, highly talented, and people who understand the needs of folks on the ground. Some skills, some positions will be looking for highly technical people, right? In finance, we need people who understand finance and numbers, who are highly skilled and technical, but also understand the concept of people, right? Because government is about serving people. It's not the same as,
working at an accounting firm.
Right, exactly, right? Or serving as an accountant for a place that makes widgets, right? So there are considerations that have to be a part of the context when you're looking at numbers. So that's important to me, the experience, not only the technical experience, but the life experience and perspectives that you bring to the table.
So as a social worker and in building teams and having that understanding, like even today you came in and my team, we got some social work going on, and the Detroit is different team. But how do you go about getting that understanding of a person's character? Because it's a fit. Because sometimes this is another one of those things people can take personally. You're great. Talent, skills, but you just don't fit into the culture of the team that I'm building here.
Yes.
talk so much about this with the April Anderson interview, and these will probably run concurrent, but how do you get that understanding? And I'm sure you've been fooled. I mean, we all have, but you've learned over time so much from social work, even those dynamics of being in a house with so much family and now leading different organizations. You have your city council. You've seen Maryann Mahaffey do this.
Yes.
You've observed a lot.
Yes.
What are you looking for when you're meeting someone to fit into the culture you're looking to bring into the executive office?
Yeah. I'm looking at their work experience and their life experience, right? And when I say life experience, I don't mean they had to have the same, tough life experience that I had. That's not what I mean. I mean their choices, right? I think how people choose to spend their careers speaks volumes for what their priorities are, right? So there are a lot of really brilliant people who could be places making a ton of money, and they've chosen to take less money and work in an organization that is making a difference and giving back. So that's part of it. It's talking to people about their family and where they are at this point in time. Interviews for me are always personal, right? It's not transactional. It's really getting to know and understand a person, and them getting to know and understand me. I am completely transparent in interviews about my expectations, what I'm looking for, what I'm not looking for, the parts of working with me that I think will be tough. I talk about in interviews. And that gives me a feel for where people are. And the other thing that's always important is not just the questions that are being asked of the person interviewing, but it's the questions they ask. Because that gives you insight into what their priorities are, how prepared they are or are not. And I have honed that skill much better over the last 10, 12 years.
As an executive.
As an executive, yes.
And also as an executive, we're just dealing with a different work culture itself. My almost like brother, Chris Shorter, shout out to now. He's the executive in one of those counties in Virginia, but he's also been a city manager in Baltimore, been a city manager in Austin.
Shout out.
The culture now is not like your dad's era, where people be there for 47 years, especially if they are talented and skilled. And I'm sure you saw this at Thaw too. Some of your very talented people, you'll give an opportunity. Nowadays, in the span of 10 years, you may even really, you being at Thaw that long, I'm pretty sure you were getting calls from people from across the country, 3 years in the Thaw, saying like, hey, you want to come to San Francisco?
Right.
How are you managing and how do you prepare from that executive position for the possibility of you're going to find some talented people, put them in this role, they're going to hit home runs and end up with larger opportunities?
It's one of the things that I had to change my approach actually when I got to Thought, because at council, I would tell people when I hired them, if you're here 4 years from now, somebody's doing something wrong, me or you. Because in a council office, there's only so far you can go.
Yeah.
And you're exposed to so much that if you're good at your job, somebody's going to snatch you. I got offered so many jobs when I was in Maryann's office, and most of them I turned down. Obviously, I took one because I ended up leaving. But I would encourage folks in my council office to leave. There were a few people who got opportunities, and they were like, no, but I don't want to leave you now. And I was like, girl, if you don't leave, you fired. Right?
There you go.
And then I took that attitude to Thaw. And after that first year, I was like, that doesn't work the same way here, right? And in the council office, first of all, because I had worked for Maryann, nobody in my office was doing anything I hadn't done before.
Yeah.
Even my executive assistant, I paid my way through school as a secretary, right? Which is what an executive assistant used to be called.
Mhm.
So even her job I could do and understood. So if anybody dropped the ball, we were able to quickly pick it up and catch it. And then at Thaw, I can't do my CFO's job. I can't do the accounting manager's job. I can't do the grant manager's job. And even if I could, if I'm doing their job.
The capacity of who's doing your job.
Exactly, right? So that whole, if you're here, in 4 years, somebody's doing something wrong, had to go out the wayside, but go by the wayside. But what I did try to do is say, okay, we can invest and develop in other ways to keep you here. Part of it was investing in, one of the first things I did when I started at Thaw was change our health plan. That same December when it was time for us to choose our benefits, and I looked at it, and we had a horrible health plan, and employees were spending like $300-$400 a month. So we cut the costs, employees pay $0, and then we changed our plan to, we actually thought has a better healthcare coverage than I had at the city, which is pretty good, and zero cost. So things like that, right? Offering development. If they wanted to learn, we tried to do cross-training and do different things to help people stay interested and involved. And it worked for some. And the truth is,
for some, it didn't.
For some, it didn't, right? It was hard to keep people in finance because the field, the industry in general has a shortage. So
yeah,
if we're competing with
everywhere in the world, actually,
and
right
Rocket,
now.
And that's right.
Right now, you're competing with everywhere in the world. Through a computer,
exactly right.
You make it, hey, it's like, hey, I'm working for this Chinese firm. And it's like, for real?
Like, what? Exactly,
like,
right?
Oh, man.
And I never have to leave my house to do it.
Yep. And
right?
it's like, I'm eating Captain Crunch all day. So, you know what I'm saying? And you want me to come in? I love you, but and it's like, Exactly. So it's good that you even have that experience. And this is like one of those real life discussions that I've been having, not just for the city of Detroit, but a lot of business in America is having this discussion. How do you keep and grow talent and pour in? And it's good that you're thinking about this, which I guess this really starts with that first plan. What do we got during those first 30 days? You said we have to do a revenue analysis of what's coming in because it's definitely way easier to know what's going out.
That's right. Yes. And part of that will also be a talent analysis as well, right? Because we're looking at the dollars and what we're spending. Part of what we're spending on our people.
Yeah.
Right. And then it'll be looking at, what talent do we have in different places and where are there gaps?
Mm-hmm. Now, this is, and I'm going to close here and then allow you to open up before Classic, Detroit is Different Questions. So this one, and I love to have you back too, but this is always one of the toughest things. And I think in all forms of government, sometimes it seems like government can talk to government a lot more and it just doesn't happen. My big mouth, I've gotten into a lot of trouble saying stuff like this often. And it's back to like, don't take this personally. Yeah. But I remember one time I'm at an event for the DGC, right? And I'm like, you recognize a lot of y'all programs are kind of connected to the other program.
Right.
If y'all kind of just had like a database where it just kind of connected, it would,
have these things called computers,
And they were like, and the lady like looked at, and I'm like, I'm not saying this is not a personal attack of you. It's just like some of the systems here could naturally be there.
Yes.
Now, you brought this up in like just inspections in the process of a person like just wanting to do a kitchen.
Right. Right.
And it's so many other things.
Yes.
But it's so much bureaucracy sometimes in government because people feel as though like if we work together, I may lose my job, what's going on. That's what I assume. And that's the assumption. How do we consolidate some of these relationships and just get people that work for the city to be in the room with the other people that work for the city?
That is a fair question. And I think it's a fair expectation. So yes, some of it is technology. having the technology talk to each other. But some of it is just being intentional, right? If we just assume that it'll happen, then it won't happen because everybody, to their credit, I believe, is going about just doing their job. I'm focused on what I'm doing because that's my job. I'm not focused on what you're doing. So we have to create a process within the system where we're focusing on each other's jobs to deliver the best outcome for residents, right? And we're not working in silos. At the end of the day, we are all customer service representatives for the residents of the city of Detroit. I don't care what your title is. I don't care what your department is. At the end of the day, everybody who works for the city of Detroit, including the mayor, is a customer service representative for the residents of the city of Detroit. And if that's our approach, then I think we'll start to tear down some of those silos because we'll start working across departments for our end goal, which is better service to our citizens.
I love the way you button that up. I love the way you buttoned it up. I couldn't think better because
Thank you.
It bothers me. I can only imagine it may bother you too. That because I know some of the politicians, but I feel like I shouldn't have to I shouldn't have to know somebody in office.
That's right.
To deal with some of the city challenges that I have. I should be able to call the number
That's right.
that is it's on the sheet. You know what
That's
I'm
right.
saying?
Yes.
Because I think to myself, like, if I'm on my block, like when my block was flooding and everything, and it's great. Like I say, I love the fact that I have relationships with elected officials. But it's like, I think to myself, like, how is every other resident that doesn't know elected officials responding to these challenges?
Right. That's like if you're trying to return something to Macy's, but you have to know the store manager.
Yes.
Right? To get a refund or to get your issue taken care of. The fact that you're a customer should be enough for somebody to respond accordingly.
And I even love that you said, yeah, because you're right. That does make sense. People are just really focused on, look, this is what I do.
Yeah.
I dig this ditch. I don't necessarily know who's coming back with the pavement tomorrow.
Right.
And I definitely don't know who's going to fix your grass.
Exactly.
Call this number. And it's like, y'all should kind of all, they should all know each other.
Right. And it is no fault of theirs, right? Mm-hmm. We're not knocking city employees, but we can create a process where it's more coordinated and where there is space for employees, for departments, for divisions to communicate and know what they're doing. And that's why I always talk about that plan, because planning creates intention, right? It gives you the opportunity to be intentional about your approach. So if, God willing, we get another $1 billion in federal funding, we don't have to scramble to figure out how to spend it. We just pull out our handy-dandy plan and say, these are the things that we have scheduled to do over the next 10 years anyway. We got extra money. We'll just move the timeline forward, right? And make sure that everybody's talking to each other throughout that process.
I love it. With that, I don't know if you'd like to give like a final thought of yours before I get to my classic Detroit is Different questions, but talk to the people. Let them know.
First of all, I love talking to you.
Thank you.
This conversation has been a lot of fun. We have touched on so many different things, things that I haven't touched on publicly before, first of all. So thank you.
Thank you.
For creating space for that. I'll say to the people, I want to be your next mayor. I'm here. I'm dedicated. I've been here my entire life, giving back and delivering for people in the city of Detroit. That won't change. That won't ever change. But right now, at this unique moment in the city's history, we need someone with my unique set of skills and qualifications, with legislative experience and executive leadership experience, nonprofit, for-profit, philanthropy, education, and government. Those are all things that the next mayor will need to bring to the table to build coalitions and continue to move the city forward and do it in a way where all are included. We want this progress to be not just for a select few, but for all Detroiters. My name is Saunteel Jenkins. My website is SaunteelJenkins.com. No H.
There you go. All right. Thank you.
Thank you for that opportunity.
Yeah. We touched on a lot of stuff.
Yes.
Now I'm going to really be thinking, now I really want to go to Natchez, Mississippi.
Okay.
That's really, it's in my head. I'm going to have to touch base there because if that's the culture, I have to touch that.
Yes.
So classic questions. Very first car, year, make, and model, and year you got it.
My very first car I bought myself from Mel Farr, which you probably don't remember. But
I remember him. Far better deal.
yeah, for a far better deal, right?
Yes.
Other dealers they don't have these prices and they can't fly either.
Yes.
That's what he's.
Yes.
Anyway, it was a Ford Fiesta. It was probably this big. It literally looked like a roller skate.
Hilarious.
And I could fill it up with $7 and ride for like 2 weeks.
Okay, that's definitely
right.
That's definitely not happening these days.
No, it is not. It is not happening these days. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where's the first place you went when you got it?
I don't remember. Probably to my mother's house.
Okay.
Because I bought it as soon as I turned 18 and was able to sign a contract on my own. And I was like, I'm grown. I'm going to do this all on my own and figure it out.
Yep.
So I probably drove it there to show them, like, look what I did.
Yeah. Show it to the fam, like, look, I'm rolling now.
Exactly.
No more bus.
No more bus, right. I was balling out in my Festiva, yes.
So, and I'll give a classic, a shorter version, but Mel Farr, before he passed, rest in peace, was
God rest his soul.
Through Aero Service and the African Caribbean Chamber of Commerce that was here in Detroit.
Yes.
He connected us often, so we would, I don't know, like over like the span of like maybe about 6 months, I was debating with Mel Farr almost like every other month. He was.
I would love to hear what those debates were about.
Signature individual. Let's just put it like that. But bright and knew where to meet people with the service and kind of definitely took athlete to business person to a whole nother.
He sure did. Remember, Mel Farr was at one of the first dealers here that was using like the GPS. He got in trouble for that.
Well, GPS, and this is so like it had a tracker that like if you didn't pay your bill, it would get cut off. Hence, he could give cars to people that that their credit is not in the best position.
Right.
And this is like also part of more of those social determinants of health or economics or realities that Black folks face. You know what I'm saying? Right. And just poor folks in America face. Let's put it like that.
That's right.
So the lending, and this is what he kind of talked about, the lending mechanism that he set up was executed through something from when Jack Kemp, who was the quarterback of the Buffalo Bills in the 70s with the O.J. Simpson team, but also that's when Mel Farr was playing for the Detroit Lions. But that bill becomes the foundation that eventually leads to subprime lending.
That's right.
So a lot of that concept of subprime lending was through Mel Farr's thought process, and so we would be debating, and I was like, yeah, you was messing up America. I mean, this was around the time, but still, it's like you still got people with their cars, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. But then some people's cars shut off, but you got people rolling, you know.
There were a couple people whose cars shut off like on the freeway.
Yes.
Yeah. But also, he was providing a service that other people, right? It's like the argument that gets made about check cashing places.
Yes.
Right? If people are unbankable until we change the banking system,
where do they go?
Where do they go?
It's it's layered in the discussion and the thought process, and I'm glad I had those early talks with him back then. Because yes, like you say, where does the solution go? Because to not give them access, as we see, they're only going to find other underworld economies, or
That's right.
and is if people have needs, they'll be met.
Exactly.
If you can regulate it, it'll be healthier.
That's right.
So, second question, which now I know the dance routine thing, you may have an answer to this. This stumps people sometimes. You're the DJ at the end of the fireworks at Woodward and Jefferson. You get to play 2 songs. What songs you playing?
Girl on Fire.
Okay.
I'm a girl. They're
I'm with it.
Fireworks. And
Okay.
Alicia Keys is the bomb.
I'm with it.
Right? So this girl is on fire. And then the second one, depending on the mood, would be Mary J. Blige, Fine,
Okay.
or it would be DJ Khaled.
Okay. All right. Which one? All I Do Is Win, I'm guessing.
It would be All I Do Is Win for sure.
There we go. So celebrations throughout, it's just the vibe that'll make a determination on the other one.
Absolutely.
That's like a true DJ.
Yeah.
So like you like one ear listening, like, okay, possibly.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Do a little mix a little State of Mind in there
Yeah.
with some, yeah.
I'm with it. Last one. You could rename Woodward after one Detroiter. Who would it be and why?
After one Detroiter, for me, because of the impact she had on my life personally and on this city, it would be Maryann Mahaffey.
Wow.
And it would be not just the fact that I'm even in politics and understand public policy in the way I do because of her, but the fact that I'm on the ballot as Saunteel Jenkins is because of Maryann Mahaffey. And I don't think a lot of people know that. The first time Maryann ran for office in 1973, and she kept her maiden name, they tried to kick her off the ballot and say, you're married, so you have to use your husband's name. She had to sue, and that's the reason women all over the state of Michigan, no matter what party they're in, don't have to put their husband's name on a ballot. So the fact that I'm Saunteel Jenkins and not Saunteel Bentley, which is my husband's name, is because Maryann fought for that right. The right for a woman to be able to decide if she wants to change her name or not.
That's deep. That's deep.
Right.
And that does sound like a Maryann story in that fight. But like we say, like progress has been made,
Yes,
but it's still a lot of progress to go.
that's right.
Hence the foundation, if you have the understanding of it, it gives more context to even knowing,
That's right.
because I can only imagine.
Right.
I can imagine the archives of, if I look through the microfiche of Detroit Free Press, even when that lawsuit was raised,
That's right.
probably columnists saying women out of order.
Right.
I already know
Right.
that's the story.
Did you ask your husband? Right.
Exactly.
So the road to where I am, literally Maryann helped pave it.
Ain't that
Right.
something?
Yes.
Ain't that something? And then that would definitely be a powerful. You're the first one to uplift her, but I definitely support that one as well.
Yes. Yes. And I uplift the spirit of Irma Henderson, Mama Joanne Watson, right? Because I watched all of them, and they inspired me. But the one who really, as one of the women who worked with me in Maryann's office, much longer than me even, and her daughter told me recently, Maryann saw something different in you,
Wow.
right? And she was always pushing you. Actually, the woman who worked in the office with me actually said, and it was Sarah, we were like, why is she taking her again?
Hilarious. Hilarious.
But yes, I'm grateful for that life-changing experience and for what she poured into me.
That's deep. That's deep. And also another one of my favorite, I'm gonna shout her out. She not in Detroit too, because that's something else that we need more. A whole nother. But Regina Ann Campbell, another one of them people from Maryann's
Regina,
office.
that's right.
So shout out, I love my Regina.
Shout out to Regina. Yes.
In Columbus holding things down.
Yes, she is.
Mhm.
Yes, I'm proud of Regina. Yep, and what she's done.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Talk about that sisterhood of Black leadership women.
Yes,
Love it.
yes.
With that, Detroit is different. Peace.
Detroit, 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 Detroit.